My rant today, my daily take today over at HartmannReport.com is titled, Right-Wing Billionaires and Trump Want a Nation Where Everything is for Sale. You know, Louise and I were watching, I forget what it was. It was one of those, it was some movie or TV show a week or so ago. And basically there was this rich guy who had moved to a foreign country, a very rich guy, like a billionaire, who had moved to a foreign country specifically because he could basically buy anything he wanted. He could buy drugs, he could buy young girls, he could buy political help, he could buy local politicians, he could buy the police. And, he just was going to live the rest of his life. Well, it's sort of what Jeffrey Epstein did when he bought his own island, right? And I have seen this, up close and personal when I was trying to get into Uganda back in 1980. I was stuck in Kenya. I was staying at the New Stanley Hotel, which has this big cafe or it's not big, but an outdoor cafe on the back side of the hotel with this giant thorn tree in the middle where people put Post-it notes and little pieces of paper and things, meet me at the corner of so-and-so, or meet me in Tanzania on Thursday. And some of the notes go back to like the 1950s. And Ernest Hemingway used to hang out there. So it's reputed to be where he wrote The Snows of Kilimanjaro. So anyhow, every day I would go down to the Ugandan embassy. Idi Amin had just been kicked out of Uganda by the Tanzanians, and there was a famine going on in northern Uganda. And I was working for an international relief agency, and we were trying to get food into Uganda, which meant I had to get into Uganda first. And every day for 3 days, I went down to the Ugandan embassy and presented my passport and asked for a visa. And every day they said, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back tomorrow. And so after 3 days, I was sitting in the cafe, the Thorn Tree Cafe, with this local old British guy. Now, I was in my 30s at the time. This guy was probably, in his 60s or 70s. But every day, he dressed in this three-piece suit, and he would sit out there in the Thorn Tree Cafe in the heat and drink his gin and tonic, telling me, I got to know him. We would have gin and tonics together every afternoon, and he told me how important it was to drink gin and tonics every day because the juniper berries keep the mosquitoes away, and the tonic, the quinine in the tonic kills malaria, which is, I guess, true. Not the more modern versions of it, but anyhow. So anyhow, I was complaining to him about, I can't get into Uganda, and the guy won't give me a visa. And he said, just put a $20 bill in your passport the next time you hand it to him. And so the next day I did that. A little worried, but I did that, and boom, I got my visa within 30 seconds. I mean, he pulled out his stamp and whack, right there in my passport. And that was one of half a dozen times that I have had bribes solicited from me. Probably the most egregious was in Haiti when the minister who was in charge of, I forget his title, but basically letting foreign charities operate in Haiti, wanted, as I recall, a $5,000 cash bribe. Now, keep in mind, this was during the time of Baby Doc. This was 1980. This was, 43 years ago. I don't know if things have gotten better or worse in Haiti. I know they've gotten a lot better in Uganda. But in any case, this is the world, in my opinion, that right-wing billionaires and Donald Trump are trying to create right here in the United States. You hear these stories about, bribery. I was stopped by a cop in Mexico. I was driving a client, one of the vice presidents of Scientific Atlanta, from the Acapulco airport down to our hotel, and we were going the same speed as everybody on the highway, but I was the gringo, right? So I got pulled over, and the cop says, "You're going to have to stay in town for a week and show up for your court date." And I was like, no, I can't do that. I got a flight in 3 days. And he basically said, give me $50 and I can make this go away. And I gave him $50 and he tore up the ticket right in front of me into little pieces and scattered them on the freeway. It was kind of funny. And kind of not. I mean, bribery is never funny. That's the world that these guys want. I mean, just look, for example, at how they spiffed Clarence Thomas to get him to be the deciding vote on Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of politicians and Supreme Court justices. They spent millions. These right-wing billionaires literally spent millions of dollars bribing Clarence Thomas and his wife, Ginny. Ginny had this fat paycheck through the Heritage Foundation, sponsored by right-wing billionaires. Clarence had, he got a free bus. He got a free home for his mom. His son got sent off to a fancy prep school. They go on these $1 million vacations on, massive yachts with private jets. They bought them. And that's what they want to do with all politicians. And frankly, that's what they do with all politicians. You see all over the country, you see Republican politicians taking big bucks from, for example, the fossil fuel industry. And that's why there's not a single Republican in America who will tell you, or at least any high-profile Republicans, that will tell you that climate change is real or that will do anything about it. Every single Republican in Congress voted against Joe Biden's package to do something about climate change. Every single one. Similarly, you're not going to find Republicans who will do anything about the cost of drugs because Big Pharma is paying them off. You won't find any Republicans who will do anything about the Medicare Advantage ripoff because big insurance is paying them off. You won't find any Republicans who will do anything about big banks ripping you off and, all the hidden charges and everything else because they're all in the pocket of these people. So that bribery that I experienced on a really small scale in Uganda, Haiti, and Mexico, that is what these right-wing billionaires want for America. They want to have absolute immunity for themselves and the ability to buy any politician, to buy any legislation, to do basically anything they want under any circumstances. And this is what Donald Trump has been pitching. I mean, he was, in fact, we have the evidence here. Trump was trash talking China, right, when he came into office because, 30 million jobs were sent to China during the previous 5 administrations. And so, Trump gets into office trash talking China. And then the Chinese embassy in one of the country's largest banks that helps North Korea evade U.S. sanctions shovels $5.5 million into Donald Trump's corporate checkbooks, booking entire floors of Trump properties. And within months, Trump hops on a plane, flies to China, and tells President Xi, "My feeling toward you is an incredibly warm one." Trump is trash-talking Qatar, calling them a funder of terrorism. So, like Mary Trump notes on her brilliant newsletter over on Substack, quote, "In April of 2018, the Qatari Permanent Mission of the United Nations bought a 4th apartment at Trump World Tower for $6.5 million. And then in the same month, Donald welcomed its monarch to the Oval Office and labeled Qatar a partner in stopping the funding of terrorism." Oh, and then Qatar gave Jared Kushner $1 billion to buy out his 666 Fifth Avenue building. Trump was ignoring Kuwait's desire to buy an Air Force worth of F-18 Hornet fighter jets until they, like this is like my sticking that $20 bill in the passport in Nairobi. They moved their Christmas party to his D.C. hotel, putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in his pocket, and suddenly, he's given them the weapon systems. Saudi Arabia. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. You want $600 billion in fossil fuel subsidies that help destroy our kids' future? Just give Republicans a few $100 million over the years. Want to own a private island and run an underage sex ring? Just buy off or blackmail enough politicians and a guy who ends up in Trump's cabinet, who, basically wrote Epstein, a sweetheart deal. Just in the first few months of the Trump administration, he took money from the pesticide industry and legalized a pesticide that we know causes neurological damage to children. He signed a law that allowed mining operations to dump toxic waste into rivers so that downstream people get poisoned by radioactive waste and arsenic and cadmium. He gutted in half a dozen, actually in 51 different ways, gutted workers' rights in the first few months of his administration. He was selling off and ruining public parklands for pennies on the dollar. He was stealing from people, he made it legal for big corporations to steal from people's retirement plans without consequence. I mean, we're seeing, Texas's Attorney General, Ken Paxton, insanely corrupt. Virginia's Attorney General went after good government as soon as he took office. I mean, and it's not just American billionaires who are buying off Republicans. Now Vladimir Putin, arguably the richest man in the world, is buying off Republicans. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tommy Tuberville literally quoting Putin talking points, quoting Russian propaganda. You know, the bottom line here, and these billionaires all know it, when everybody's a criminal, nobody's a criminal. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy the rule of law in the United States so that, you know, they can just basically do whatever they want. They can live with impunity and immunity. Now, Democrats are trying to reverse this. They tried this with the For the People Act in 2021. It died in the hands of a Republican filibuster that was aided by Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Hopefully neither of them will be in the Senate next year. So, but the choice has never been starker. Do we want America to be like Uganda and Mexico? Or do we want America to be, you know, what America could be? Get out there and vote.